Hi guys, and welcome to my channel. My name is Erica and I am the Lopsided Crafter. A couple years ago, I did a video tutorial for my cozy slipper socks. I've had several questions on how I got to my size determination. So I decided I was going to update my video, show you how I came to my sizing, and, you know, maybe make it a little more understandable. So I've mentioned a couple times in the video that you can follow the video or follow the pattern. The pattern is going to be available on Etsy, and the link will be in the description. So let's head to the loom and make this updated cozy slipper sock. Okay, let's make a slipper sock. This sock was the one that I originally did in my first video that will be linked below. This is an updated video. More of a way to show you how to get your correct measurements and things like that. So, okay, so this was the original sock done slipper sock done in my first video. So I wanted to update to show a little bit more about how I get my measurements for how long I want my sock to be and things like that. So, okay, so I wanted to update the video a little bit and show you the foot size chart. This can be found at the Craft Yarn Council. I will put that link below in the description. But I went ahead and just printed off the women's size chart so that we can go over a little bit. These are the US sizes listed above. We have our foot circumference, sock height, and total foot length. Now, this needs to be followed loosely. And the reason why I say that is because I fall in between this size right here. And if we go down here to my foot length, it says 9 1/4 inches to 10 inches. My foot does not fall into that 9 1/4 to 10 inches, my foot length. Mine is slightly less than that at 9 inches. So what I can base on that is that I just make my socks a tad bit shorter. So let me show you how I got the measurements based on my favorite pair of socks for my slipper socks. Now, when making socks, you want them to be slightly, just slightly smaller than your actual foot, because socks need to be at a negative ease so that way they stay up on your ankle, your foot. My favorite pairs of socks. It has the right leg length for me, the right foot length for me. But let me show you. So if we take our measuring tape here and we measure from the middle of the heel, kind of right where the stitch line is. If we take our measuring tape and measure from there to our toe. Now, don't stretch your sock out. You want this to be unstretched. You'll see that mine is 8 inches. Now, this will stretch to fit my 9-inch foot. And then from that same mark to the top of the cuff is roughly 7 3/4 inches. So I can guesstimate that I need it to be at least 8 inches this way and 7 3/4 inches that way. Or to make it even simpler, you can take your tape measure, again unstretched, and measure from the top of your sock all the way down to the heel of your sock. To the toe of your sock, which for me, right, this pair of socks, in particular socks, is 13 inches. So if we take our slipper sock and we measure it, this one is about 12.5 inches. Now, something to keep in mind about the particular stitch that we use for this pattern, it is extremely stretchy. So I'm okay with it being a little bit shorter, about a 1/2 inch shorter than the measurement that I got here. So all this to say, if you take your favorite pair of socks and you measure it from the cuff to the toe unstretched, that'll kind of give you an idea of how long you want to make your slipper sock. Now, if you are wanting to make these as gifts, that's when you could follow this chart. There's a women's size chart, which I have printed here. There's a men's size chart, and there is also a infant and a toddler size chart. Just find their shoe size. Make sure that you have at least their foot length. The sock height you can play around with if you think they're going to like long socks or ankle type socks. Just make sure that you have this number for your foot length and then add additional. So if I wanted my sock height to be 10 inches and I knew that I was making a pair of slipper socks for somebody within this range, and I knew or guesstimated that their foot length was 10 inches, then I would knit my whole slipper sock 19.5 to 20 inches. Now that includes this extra little bit right here, and we'll get to that when we get in more in depth into the pattern. But that is how I get my sizing for the slipper sock. Now let's talk a little bit more about what we need for this project. So for this project, I'm going to be using a CinDwood Crafts loom. This is a 24 peg loom, and it is the 5/8 gauge. I'm going to be using a yarn tensioner, my loom hook, tape measure, and of course, yarn. So for this one, I'm going to be using Loops and Threads Charisma. So they changed their labeling. Okay, so this is 109 yards, 3.5 ounces, 100 meters, or 100 grams. This particular color is Rainy Day Multi, and it is a bulky US number 5. Okay, so this one skein should be enough. And I say that loosely, should be enough to make one pair of slipper socks if you are making the same size that I am. Now, if you knit a little looser or you use a bigger loom, then you may need a little bit more yarn. You will also need more yarn if it matters to you that the striping and the color does not match. For me, I'm okay with that. I typically have enough left over to start a second pair. Like I said, for me, I only use one ball, but I've been loom knitting for so long, I know exactly the amount of yarn that I'm going to use. You may want to have a second one just to be on the safe side, especially if you want to make it longer or while you're learning and getting your tension set. So let's get started. So the first thing you'll want to do is put your yarn through your tensioner if that's something that you choose to use. We are going to be doing the chain cast on. So we're going to start off by making a slip knot. Now, you want to cast on the opposite way from what you are comfortable working. So let me say that in a different way for you. I'm more comfortable purling clockwise. I am right-handed. So in order for my yarn to be set up to where I'm going to be working clockwise, I am going to cast on this way. Now, if you're left-handed people typically are more comfortable working counterclockwise. So in order to get your yarn started in the correct spot to work counterclockwise, you're going to cast on clockwise. Okay. So we take our loop after we've made our slip knot and we bring our working yarn forward. Now this first one is a little fidgety because it's not really connected to anything. So you got to kind of watch it when you pull it through. You're going to take your working yarn, pull it through the loop on the slip knot that you made. Just kind of hold to this tail at the same time in the back so that it doesn't flip around. And there is your first stitch. From there, you're going to take that loop, put it behind the peg, and pull the working yarn through. The first couple times, I just kind of hold on to that tail to give it a little bit of extra tug. Not a huge tug, but a little extra tug to make sure that the tension stays the same. Now the loop is going to get bigger and bigger each time that you cast on, and that's fine. Just pull it down a little bit. Make sure you're snug around your peg, and then move on to the next one. This is called the chain cast on. It is also known as the crochet cast on, but it's a lot easier to do it this way than it is to try to get a crochet hook in between all these pegs. So I choose this because it makes this nice little chain, and that will actually end up being on the top of your sock, and it just gives it a nice polished edge. So continue casting on, and I'll meet you back when we get over here to show you what to do with this peg. Okay. So now we have chained on every one of our pegs. We just take that loop and pop it on right there. Now, when I am doing slipper socks, this peg, our March peg, for me is my last peg. If I wanted it to be my first peg, then I would have started right here. It's just easier for me to know that this is my last peg. My working yarn now is going in the way that I like, so we know that we started our cast on in the correct direction to get to the way that I am comfortable working, which is clockwise. So now we are going to do this part of our sock. And in order, because there is no nylon in this, we're going to do the flat knit stitch, which is a little bit tighter than the E-wrap knit that we do down here. And this is just going to cinch it in a little bit, give it a little bit more structure to hold up on your ankle or leg. So in order to do the flat knit stitch, we are going to take our working yarn, put it above the loop on the hook, and flip it over. That easy. Flip it over. Our next two stitches are going to be purl, and this is what will give us the rib. So you bring your working yarn below your loop, put your loom hook through the loop, pointed down, flip it up, which causes that yarn to come through your loop. You're simply going to pop that off and then put it back on. Again, working yarn is on the bottom of your stitch. Put your loom hook through, flip it up, and grab that working yarn. Now be careful, sometimes with certain yarns you can split your yarn when you're flipping your hook. So just be mindful of that. Pop it off and put it back on. One thing I did forget to mention, you are more than welcome to use stitch markers to mark off your knit and your purl stitches if you like. Completely up to you. So we'll do a few more. We got 2 knit stitches coming up. Two purls. Feel free to slow the video down to watch it in slow motion if that's easier for you. Another option, if you don't like following a video, or if you would just like to have the pattern in hand, the pattern can be found in my Etsy shop. I really love wearing these slipper socks, especially in the wintertime. So I know it's, well, at least at the filming of this video, it is mid-June. But you can never have too many pairs of slipper socks in your stash, right? In your drawers. Yeah. So I'm here to my last 2 stitches. And when you get to your last stitch, see we have the 2 loops right here. We're just going to treat those 2 stitches as one. I'm just going to push it up just a little bit so I can get my yarn under there. I'm going to go through both of them, just like on every other purl. Flip up, pull that yarn forward, and pop it off and put it back on. So now we have done 1 complete round of our rib stitch, and we're going to continue to do that for 2 inches. I'll see you back. Okay, we have got our 2 inches of ribbing done, and it should look something like this. So now we are going to start the next part of the pattern, and this is where your yarn tensioner comes in. Now you can do this next section 1 or 2 ways. You can E-wrap all the way around and work the loops off and then purl around, or you can do this little trick that I do to make your rounds go faster. So if you're not familiar with the E-wrap, you take the working yarn behind the peg and you wrap it. So you're kind of wrapping it like a backwards E. And you want to wrap all the way around. And the reason why I like to use this tensioner, which is nothing more than an ink pen with the guts taken out, but it keeps the same tension for my wraps all the way around. So that way I don't have part of something that I'm working on, whether it's a sock, shawl, hat, whatever. It keeps it the same tension so that part of it's not tight, part of it's not loose. It's just all consistent. So then what I do is I just bring, once I get to that last peg, I just bring that yarn forward, okay? So here is the magic. We are going to actually work 2 rounds at one time. So we're going to take that loop, the bottom loop, and we're going to flip it over the top. That is an E-wrap because we wrapped it and then flipped it. So that is an E-wrap knit stitch. Now from there, I'm going to bring that working yarn below, pull it through, and do my purl at the same exact time. So essentially what we're doing is we're working our E-wrap row and our purl row for the garter stitch at the same time. Nice little trick, huh? So E-wrap knit and purl. E-wrap knit and purl. E-wrap knit and purl. And we're going to continue to do the E-wrap knit and purl until our piece measures 11 inches. And that includes the beginning of the rib. Now, this is for a women's size 7 to a 7.5. If you measured your favorite sock and you want to make it your piece longer, by all means, please do so. I will probably make this a little bit longer because I'm going to give these to my mother, and she wears a size 8, and she likes the sock to go up a little bit higher on her leg. So I will knit these a little bit longer. So continue to do that until your desired length. And then I will meet you back to show you what to do to finish off your sock. So once you have finished your first round, or first 2 rounds if you did the hack, of the garter stitch, you just continue to do what we did on the first round. You wrap all the way around your loom like so. Bring that yarn forward, and then just start working your loops off, doing your e-knit wrap and your purl. E-knit wrap and purl. And that's basically how you do the garter stitch when working in the round. So continue to do that for your desired length, and we will meet back in a few minutes. Okay, once you have achieved your desired length, what we are going to do is flat knit for an additional 2 inches. And remember, the flat knit is the yarn is on top, and we just simply flip the stitch over. And what this does is it creates a little bit of a tighter spot up here for your toe. A little bit more structure to kind of, you know, because our toes are a little bit, our toe bed is a little bit smaller than our actual foot area. So we'll do that for 2 inches, and then we'll meet back to where we start doing our bind off. Okay, once you have flat knit your 2 inches or your desired length, our next round is going to be an E-wrap round. Just a plain E-wrap. So you can wrap all your pegs at one time or wrap them individually. Whatever is more comfortable for you. I tend to like to wrap them all at one time and then work the stitches off. Just leave that one hanging. You can knit the last stitch off to hold that yarn in place if you like, or you can go around and knit those stitches off. Now this one might be a little tighter because of the previous round being a flat knit round. So we're going to work all these stitches off. Just like we've been doing. And then we will continue to the next part of the pattern. So for our last main round, we're going to push these down just a little bit. And we are going to flatten it around. Now this round, we need to make sure that it is a loose round. So don't pull your yarn really tight when you're knitting it. Just kind of let it lay there. We want to make sure that this round is loose because we're going to have to move stitches. So you can pull that out a little bit if it's too tight. That's a good way to adjust your tension. Just make sure that this round is loose. Because if it's too tight, you won't be able to move your stitches to the pegs that you need to for the cast off rounds. So go ahead, finish doing that, and then we'll get to the last part of your slipper sock. Okay, so now we are going to start with binding off. You should have your rib section, your garter section, your flat knit section. Then you E-wrapped around, and then you did a loose round of flat knitting. So now what we're going to do is start moving pegs. And remember, for me, this is peg 1. So we're going to be moving peg 4 to peg 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to move this stitch over here to peg 3. We're going to move 8 to 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're going to move 12 to 11. So this was 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. See, this is why you want that last round to be really loose. We're going to move 16 to 15. So this was 12. So 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. And then we're going to move 20 to 19. So 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. And then finally, we're going to move 24 to 23. So what you should have is 3 pegs with a stitch, 1 without. 3 with, 1 without. All the way around. Now what we're going to do is do 1 round of flat knitting. So when you come to a peg that has no stitch on it, just put the yarn behind it. Now remember, this round also has to be somewhat loose because we're going to continue to move pegs. When you come to a peg that has 2 stitches on it, just treat both of those stitches as 1. Now if it's too tight to flip it over both of them at one time, you can do 1 at a time. Just make sure that you give yourself a little bit of slack with that yarn. So we're behind there because that one had no stitch on it. Knit those off. Now we've come to one that's got 2 on it. You can flip them over both at the same time or 1 at a time. So continue to work those stitches off. Okay, now let's start the next round for our decrease. Remember, this is my peg 1. So we're going to move peg 2 to peg 1. We're going to move 6 to 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Ten to 9. Fourteen to 13. 18 to 17. 22 to 21. So basically what you have is one peg with a stitch, one without, one with, one without, one with, one without, all the way around. And we're going to do the same thing we did on the last round. We are going to flat knit those stitches with keep making sure that we put the yarn behind the peg that does not have a stitch on it. So go ahead and work the ones off that have the loops on it, making sure that you put the yarn behind the pegs that do not. Okay, we're almost there. What we're going to do now is wrap our working yarn around our loom 2 times. And that will give us enough yarn for casting off our final stitches. You can go a little further if you like for good measure, completely up to you. Cut that yarn. Set it aside, and now what we're going to do is we're going to take our loom hook and we are going to pull through every other stitch, popping it off as we come to it. So we're going to pull it through just like we would if we were purling. Just going to put it on the bottom. Pull that through, all the way through, and then just pop that stitch off. So because we did this one, we're going to skip this one and go to this one. Pull that through, pop it off, skip this one, and go to this one. And this just makes, this is a cinching bind off, but it makes it a little bit more crisp than doing every stitch at one time. So we did this one, we're going to skip this one and go to this one. And don't split your yarn. That's one thing about some bulky yarns. It's really easy to split. So this is kind of what is happening right here. Part of the cinching. So we did this one, we're going to skip this one and go to this one. And we're just going to continue in this manner until we've worked all of our stitches off. So now that we're back over here, I did this one, so we'll skip this one. Now we're just going to go to the ones, the pegs that have the stitches left on, and work those off. Oh, sorry about that noise. That was my other loom hook just hitting the floor. So see how it's kind of creating this cross cinch, if you will. Just continue doing that all the way around until you have no stitches left on your loom. And it might get a little bit harder, not necessarily harder, but more tedious once you get towards the end and you don't have very many stitches left. But just take your time. You know what you're doing by now. Just work those off. So I'm here to the very last one. I'm going to pop that off. And this is kind of what you're left with. So from here, I just like to start pulling it a little bit, not very much. And once it's a little taut, I like to turn it inside out, making sure that I grab that working yarn and pull it on the inside of the sock. So flip it inside out. And then work on pulling it tight. I like to do this from the inside because it gives it a little bit more of a flat look on the outside. Now from here you can just weave in your ends and you are done. And this is what your sock will look like once you've turned it back to the correct side. It leaves this nice little join up here at the top. That's why I like to do the cinching part on the inside of the sock. And there you go. You just loosen them stitches up. You can pull them, stretch them. It's very, very, very stretchy. You've got your nice ribbing here. And that is our updated pattern for the Cozy Slipper Socks. Hi guys, I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, that you've learned something, that you enjoy your new slipper socks. Please don't hesitate to ask me any questions below. If you're on Instagram and you make them, tag me. I would love to see your finished projects. So yeah. If you're new here, thanks for stopping by. Please consider hitting the like button and the subscribe button. And if you are one of my regular longtime viewers, hi, and welcome back. All right. Thanks for watching, guys. And until next time, happy looming. Bye.